Welcome to r/Entitled People, where we share stories from your lives about people who think the rules don't apply to them and they should get what they want. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel and for so many likes. And today we have 4 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story, Crazy Aunt Wants to Live in My House. The second story, Entitled Teachers Are Some of the Worst Human Beings. The third story, How rude and not brought up to offend a person for his choice. The fourth story, Don't try to lie to your security team. The first story is, Entitled Aunt demands to live in my new house and won't take no for an answer. I teach her a lesson. This all took place 5 years ago, so some parts may not be verbatim, but I'll do my best to recount this story. I think you'll enjoy it. At this time, I had just purchased my first house, but told no one about it. I wasn't even dating at this time. It was a huge 3-bedroom townhouse well outside of the nearest city, and it came with 10 acres of land. Somehow word had gotten around that I had just bought a house. I hadn't even moved in at this point. It wasn't long before my entitled aunt found out, and apparently made plans to move in and live there, despite the fact I hadn't even moved in yet. It wasn't long before I got a call from her. First thing out of her mouth on this call was, not so much as a hello first. Make sure I have a key when I arrive and move in. I'm like, excuse me? Move in? Yes, I'm going to live there, and I'll allow you to live there too, as long as you don't cause issues and get loud. I told her no, you're not moving into my house, and we'll be thrown out if you try. I'm packing my stuff now, she said, as if my word was meaningless, and I'll be there first thing tomorrow, and you had better have my key in hand then, and hung up. As a result, I called the cops, who put me in touch with the local sheriff's department. I explained what was going on, so they told me they would have a patrol check the property from time to time, and run off anyone that was not supposed to be there, and would arrest those that refused to leave. As it turns out, my entitled aunt tried to go to the property that night and dropped some of her stuff off, but was caught by the patrol and told to leave. When she said it was her house, they told her no, it wasn't, and the owner does not want anyone on his property, having to threaten to arrest her if she refused to leave. She called my phone number within an hour, at about 11 p.m., and started yelling about the sheriff running her off, and I just hung up on her and unplugged my phone for the night. I got up at about 4 a.m. that morning and plugged my phone in, and found my voice message box full of repeated messages from her about how dare I not answer my phone, and have her run off from her house. Yes, she actually said her house. Later that morning, I called the sheriff again and requested an officer be there at the house in case she came back, and arranged a time for my arrival. On my arrival, a sheriff met me at the house. It was less than 30 minutes until my entitled aunt arrived with a carload of her personals, and immediately walked up to me and demanded her key. You're not getting a key, and you're not living here no matter what you think. She blew up at this point and started shouting how it was her house, and she was going to live there, whether I wanted her to or not. I just smiled, closed the door in front of her, and locked it in front of her. She, of course, tried to grab the keys from me, which I simply put in my pocket and told her, tell that to the sheriff standing behind you. She screamed, BS, you're not keeping me out of my house. I looked past her and said, see, what did I tell you? At that, a loud from behind her, ma'am, you have to leave the property or you will be arrested for trespassing. She turned with a sour look on her face, getting ready to unleash another tirade on whoever was behind her, and instead made a strangled sound, and her face went white as a sheet. Ma'am, this man does not want you on his property. As of now, you're considered trespassing, and will be arrested if you refuse to leave and cease harassing this gentleman. Before you go, auntie, she hates when I call her that. Just because you want something doesn't mean you're gonna get it, such as my new house. If I ever see you on my property again without my permission, I will have you arrested and have your car towed at your expense. If looks could kill, I'd be dead several times over from the glare she was giving me. Better yet, you're not going to be allowed to come here again, and I don't care if you become homeless or how badly you need a place to live. Now leave before you get arrested and have to pay to get your car back after it gets towed. She left, giving me the bird on her way to the car, prompting a sharp rebuke from the sheriff. To this day, she's been going around telling anyone that will listen about how I robbed her of her new house, and how she's going to get her house back someday. That's going to be a problem for her. Since then, I've improved the property and sold it for a tidy profit to a really nice, but takes no crap couple, and bought a new property with more acreage, about 25 more acres, and no one is telling her I moved. She did try sneaking back onto the property about 3 months after I sold it, and the couple's husband nearly shot her, because she came at around midnight, I think, intending on trying to sneak in through an open window or something. This time, she did spend about 30 days in jail, 100 hours community service, and 3 years probation plus fees and court costs for trespassing on private property, and attempting to enter a private residence without permission. I don't remember what the actual charge was. Her entitlement knew no bounds, and having a gun pointed at her was a harsh but ultimately necessary lesson after learning she was not getting her way with me. From what I'm told, she's calmed down, some, but still acts entitled, and is actively trying to find where I live. The second story is, entitled teacher called kid with autism an R and tries to force him to move, then is dealt a sweet treat of revenge. As a teacher, I've come across many entitled people, from parents, kids, and members of the public, but the worst kind I've dealt with? Entitled fellow teachers. So I work for an autism specialist school with our student population deemed too difficult for mainstream schools. As a faculty, we decided to organize a trip to the city's science museum, as this museum is full of sensory exhibits and has slots specifically suited for special needs, including quiet hour for those on the autism spectrum. We get everyone who is capable of managing the trip all organized and made the drive there. We have an amazing time seeing all the exhibits, and it was absolutely wonderful seeing our kids enjoy every moment and gaining so much from it. Every kid is staffed on a one-to-one basis, important as we go on. At 12 p.m., we're informed it's lunchtime for our school, so we head up to the atrium to the school's own lunch benches. Now, we only had about 10 kids and 10 adults, so there are 20 of us total, but we did take up about 6 of the benches, as many kids on the spectrum need their own space, as sitting closely together can cause someone to go into sensory overload, and that's how incidents can occur. The staff were very understanding and assured us that there's enough space for other school groups. At 12:15, entitled teacher, E.T., and her entourage of private school high schoolers appear for their lunch slot. E.T. stops and stares at our group taking up 6 benches. She literally grabs a worker walking past and says that there's not enough space for her 30 kids. The worker, despite being shocked that this woman had her arm around her arm, said that they know, and they pulled together some chairs and tables from the cafe to make up the seats that are being used. E.T. But we're a school group. We have to sit in the school group area. K.W. Kind worker. I'm sorry, miss, but the extra tables and chairs will still be in the official school zone, but there's not enough benches. E.T. This group here, pointing at us, have been here long enough. Make them move. K.W. I'm sorry, they haven't allotted 30 minutes for lunch and need more space. E.T. They have too much space. My kids need it more, as they're doing A-levels, and these kids look like they can't even get GCSEs. I'd had it with her belittling our students like this. Me, excuse me, but there's no need to talk about children like this, and I would appreciate you accepting the arrangement, as raising your voice upsets our kids, and it's eating into your own lunchtime. The E.T. stared at me like I'd slapped her. E.T. There's no space for us to have our lunch. Then she grabbed one of our kids and tried to move him. He freaked out and tried to slap her for touching him, as to him being touched unexpectedly is like being stabbed by a very hot knife. We jumped up and got her off him, and she started screaming that we assaulted her. K.W. thankfully directed E.T.'s class to their lunch seats and then called security. E.T. started saying we assaulted her and called our kid an R because he was now rocking back and forth, making noises as a way to regulate himself. K.W. quickly set security straight and asked if we wanted to call the police. Normally we would, but we felt the police aren't good dealing with nonverbal kids, and after talking to his mother, she agreed not to involve them. We didn't want him more stressed than he already was. Instead, K.W. found E.T.'s name on the system of booking and banned her from the science center. K.W. then called the school and explained what happened, including the physical and verbal assault of one of our students. What a victory! As she was now banned, she was no longer allowed to be part of the school group she was on, so she was forced to answer her call from the school outside and explain the situation. E.T. really did phone home, and by the look on her face, home was exactly where she would remain until she found another teaching job. The group she was with had enough staff to hold the fort until a replacement teacher came from the school to take the group around the last part of the educational tour. Our kids finished lunch, had a longer break to regulate and enjoy quiet time, and then we continued on our day with no further incidents. The next story is, Karen insults my wedding ring to my face. This happened to me some years ago. It's my favorite example of entitlement. Backstory. When I first met the man who became my husband, we were not well off. He moved across the country to come live with me and had not a penny to his name. He proposed to me without a ring, which I was perfectly okay with. It was incredibly romantic. He popped the question spontaneously, and it's still one of the happiest days of my life. He promised when he was better off financially, he would buy any ring that I wanted. A while after our engagement, the day came where he surprised me by taking me to a jewelry store. He had saved a $5,000 budget, plus a little wiggle room for some credit if needed. He told me to go nuts. It was so fun and romantic. I tried on dozens of rings, diamonds, platinum bands, lesser gemstones, etc. Then I saw a set of steel and titanium rings. They were originally designed for the grooms, not for the brides. But I'd never been a big diamond fan, and I preferred simple flat rings to mounted stones. I ended up falling in love with a super simple black titanium ring with angled grooves. It was gorgeous. It was exactly what I wanted. And best of all, they were cheap, less than $200. Husband liked them too, so much that we got him a matching band. We decided to use them as both the engagement ring and the actual wedding ring. We had to special order them, as the jewelry store didn't stock our sizes on hand. I got a surprise when they arrived to find that husband had requested engraving on the inside of mine. It said, "My Precious." I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I love that ring to death. I wear it to this day, and it still makes me smile. The story. This took place 7 years after I got married. I worked at a chain sandwich shop where we assembled the sandwiches in front of the customer. My store was next to a yoga studio, CrossFit training, and plastic surgeon's office. So we got our fair share of Karens and holier-than-thou rich people. It wasn't uncommon for somebody to drive up in a $100,000 sports car, toting a Prada bag, and sunglasses that cost more than my rent. They almost always came in to order the pickiest and most complicated subs, then complained about the price. We were quite used to these kind of people, but this lady took the cake. Enter the entitled Karen and her bratty teenage daughter. They looked the part to a T. They proceeded to order the usual complicated and picky subs, asking tons of questions about the nutritional info of every item. To assemble the food, we wear clear plastic food service gloves. Because my ring is flushed in my hand and won't rip the gloves, I had approval from the manager to wear it at work. While assembling this woman's sandwich, her teenage daughter notices my ring. Entitled daughter: "Oh, that's cute. Is that a promise ring?" Me: "No, that's my wedding ring." Karen: "Huh, are you serious?" Me: "Yes, it's both my engagement and wedding ring. It has been for several years." Karen looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You have a cheap husband." I balked at her comment, but tried to remain professional. "That may be your opinion, ma'am, but I happen to like this ring. I picked it out myself." Karen: "Then you have terrible taste in jewelry." She then turned to her daughter: "If your father had given me a ring that ugly, I would have left him on the spot. Make sure your future husband gets you a ring that at least has diamonds in it." I was floored. I usually get tons of compliments about my ring. I never expected someone to insult it, let alone straight to my face. I was so flabbergasted I couldn't even continue working on her food. I excused myself and went into the back and told my coworker to finish them up for me. I couldn't even stand to be around them. When I told my manager the whole story, he almost didn't believe me. We had to watch the security footage to prove it had actually happened. Never saw that entitled woman again. Glad she didn't come back. I still shake with rage every time I recount the story. I still have that ring on my hand today, and it's still the most beautiful, wonderful ring I could ever hope for. I love my husband very much. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me, and that matters far more than any jewelry. And the last story is... Quickie. I do work here, and I can shut you down. This is a story of a lady who thought I worked in the Help You With Dumb Computer Questions department, the help desk. In fact, I work in the Cut Off All Your Access department, IT security. Conversation between me and a user at work just now. We'll call her Karen. Me: "I got your email requesting a new access code you sent to information security last night." Me: "I see that someone sent you a new code on Tuesday. Then again, yesterday you asked someone else for another new access code. Perhaps I can help with the underlying problem." Karen: "I didn't email anyone. Are you gonna help me or what?" Me: "So you're telling me the email to infosec@company.com requesting a new access code last night wasn't really you?" Karen: "I said I didn't email you." Me: "So are you telling me this email screenshot is a forgery? It's not really you requesting access to your account?" Karen: "I'm very busy. This conversation is over." Me: "I understand you're very busy. However, if someone has access to your email and is using it to send forged requests for access codes, I'm gonna need to lock your account now. You'll be able to log into your computer after we figure out who's pretending to be you and how they're doing that." Karen: "I now recall sending that email." Addition: shortly afterwards, she realized that after our conversation, she lost all access. That's because I reset the access code as requested again, meaning the code she had no longer worked. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you liked it, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell.